Let us find comfort in the words of the ancient sage. God, what are we that you are mindful of us? Or indeed, those who come after us that you take account. Our lives are as vanity, for our days pass away as a shadow. In the morning, we flourish and blossom forth. In the evening, we are cut down and wither. You turn us to contrition and demand, return, O ye children. If you were wise, you would consider your end. When you die, you shall carry nothing away. Your glory shall not descend after you. But trust this, God does redeem the souls of the servants. None of them who trust shall be forsaken. The psalmist said, I lift up my eyes unto the mountains. From whence will my help come? And answered, my help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. By day, the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life, your coming and your going, now and forevermore. As we have gathered in this loving assembly, let the thoughts of this moment be thoughts of tenderness and gratitude. Tenderness because of the woman in whose memory we are now gathered. Gratitude for all that has been lovable throughout the years. Tenderness toward every human frailty. Gratitude for a life known intimately and held in honor. Gratitude for strong ties of family affection. Gratitude for the privilege of knowing and of sharing with one another our experiences of joy and sorrow. Gratitude for opportunities to help and care for one another, which enable us to believe that our lives count. We would not be spared the consciousness of sorrow and loss, for as our experience deepens, so too does our understanding of one another deepen. We pray this, may we win from our joys and sorrows the wisdom of patience and sympathy, the courage to live faithfully, and the confidence that dark hours may have precious meanings. And may we gain a deepened sense of the value and worth of a life well lived. O God, author of life and death, our wisdom is small, our vision short. One by one, our companions passing along the road of life disappear from our view. We know that each must walk the same pathway to the door. We know that each must walk the same path to the doorway of the grave. We strain to see what lies beyond the gate, but all is darkness to our mortal sight. Yet even the darkness is not too dark for you, O God, but the night shines as the day. You have created us in your image and made us share in your enduring righteousness. You have put eternity into our hearts. You have implanted within us a vision of life everlasting. This hope we cherish in humility and faith, trusting in your endless goodness and your wondrous love. Into your hands we commit Sue Baskin's spirit, for you keep faith with the living as well as those who have gone on. Hatzor tamim polo ki chol drachav mishpat, el emunah ve'ein avel tzadik v'yasharhu. Hatzor tamim b'chol ma'aseh. Mi yomar lo ma ta'aseh tzadik ata Adonai lahamit ulahachayot asher biyadcha pikon kol ruchot. Thy work, O God, is perfect, for all thy ways are justice, a God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and right. Who can say, what doest thou? Thou bringest death and giveth life. What mortal can demand of thee? What hast thou wrought? Thou alone, O God, dost righteously apportion both life and death. In thy hand is the destiny of all souls. Thou wilt not forget us. Thy mercy will surely abide with us. Baruch Dayan Emet. Blessed art thou, Judge of truth, who dost ordain death and summon us to life. We are gathered in this large and loving assembly to pay tribute to the life and give honor to the memory of Sue Baskin. At times such as this, questions inevitably come to mind. Questions of why. Questions of sadness as you contemplate her illness and feel her loss so keenly. Questions for which there are no easy answers. What is easy in this family is love. It pours out of every story, every laugh, and every memory that you shared with me. The love even poured out when the memories weren't easy ones, even when you remembered differently, and even when the same stories were lived with differing lessons and meanings. Another way to think of these questions and stories is that they come about a woman who was at the heart of her family, her living, breathing, growing, full of personalities and stacked with ideas, an alive and wonderful, loving family. I think that would please your mom. She had individual relationships with each of you, loved you enough to tell you what she thought, and worked to launch you out into the world so that you could take it on your own terms. I thank you, Dick and Tom and Carrie especially, and Adrian and Jan and Bruce. From you I learned how Sue had a unique rapport with each one of the three of you, whether you were the favorite or not, whether you were part of the family for decades or only for these last few years. I learned how she loved your dad, Marvin, how she tended to his needs and helped him build this family, and how she depended on him to provide the security and structure of a life that she loved. They built a life together that's shared with dedication and love. I learned how Mom decorated her life with friends and mahjong games and hospitality and bargain shopping, a life of enjoyment, a life of happiness. Sue loved her grandchildren and treated you, I sense, much like your parents, as full and complete people with whom she could share her ideas and thoughts and introduce you to the world. The smiles coming from her face and the pictures of you together are great proof of the happiness you brought her and the love that you felt. While these last years were difficult for her and for you, they also held love and happiness. She made a place for herself at Arden Courts, and you continued not only your relationships with her, but with each other as well. The older stories got retold, and the newer ones got added to the repertoire. Your gathering is marked by ease as a group of 3 siblings, 3 couples, and in all kinds of combinations as you share a history of friendships, of marriage, of relationship, and love. And it's a testimony to Sue and the life that she wished for you. 2,000 years ago, King Solomon uttered the words that we use at funerals when someone has died. All the time we say, Yehi zichra livracha, may her memory be for a blessing. I've always found those to be really rich words because blessing is so ephemeral. What's a blessing? It's something out in the air somewhere. But maybe it's when you find a bargain. Maybe it's when you share an opinion. Maybe it's when you welcome your children's friends in. Maybe it's when you chaperone a dance. Maybe when it's you hold your grandchildren close. That those are the memories of your mother, of your grandmother, that continue to enrich, inform, and bring more love to your lives than indeed is her memory for a blessing. May it be so. Amen. Let me just let you all know, and then we can dispense with stage directions. Carrie's going to come forward and read a letter that Marvin wrote to Sue, and then Dick and Chris are going to speak.
Thank you for coming. First of all, I wanted to introduce the family because we didn't name them in the paper because we have multiplied, and there wasn't enough room to name everybody. So my brother Dick, the oldest, has 4 children. Corey and his wife, Josephina, live in California. They're the only ones that couldn't make it. Next comes Chris and his wife, Kelly, and they have Bo, the oldest great-grandchild. Then comes Tony, and he is married to Sarah, and so oddly enough, there is another Sarah Baskin. That was my dad's mother, and they have 2 daughters, Sophie and Dixie. And then there's Tracy, who has Griffin and Cole. She's married to Scott, and they're all from Chicago, basically. My brother Tom has 2 sons. He has Ryan, who is married to Michelle, and they have Maddie and Haley. And then there is Kyle Baskin. He doesn't have a significant other yet. And then there are my children with Mark. I have Marcy, who's married to Tyler, and they have Evelyn and Kevin. And then there's my daughter, Sari, who's married to John, and they have baby Charlotte. And then there's my daughter, Lisa, who lives in sin with a young man but is not married. So, there you have our family. And I'm glad you can laugh because we've been laughing as we share stories. My mother had a lot of years. Last few weren't so wonderful, but she wasn't alone. And the funeral wouldn't be complete without hearing from my dad. My dad kind of ran things and ran my mother in their own way, like the times. And he wrote this to my mother on September 11th, which was their anniversary, in 2001. It was their 52nd anniversary, and it was a year and a half before my dad passed away. So we found this, and this is the paper he wrote to her, and I think it says it all. Anniversary cards don't always say what I want you to know, so I'm writing you these few words to let you know how I feel about you on our 52nd anniversary. I want to start by saying that overall, you've been an outstanding wife to me all of these years. Much, much better than I thought you would be. And in the final analysis, you've provided me with a wonderful family. You've been my constant companion. You've addressed yourself to all the things that make my life worthwhile. You even seemed to be satisfied with me as your husband. Now, I know who I am and how I measure up, and I think I just got lucky in marrying a Schreiber, my mother's maiden name, woman, because once they make a choice, right or wrong, they make the best of it, and I'm happy for that. So after 52 years that seemed to have passed so quickly, I sincerely wish you as happy an anniversary as I am celebrating. You made it worth it. You've made it fun, and for as long as it goes on, it's been a good ride, as Charlotte says, who's a friend of theirs. And I can truly say, I love you, MB. So that was my parents. It's hard to not keep them together even now. So that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Rabbi Stone. It was quite significant for all of us to hear what you did with with the chaos that we threw at you yesterday. Good morning. For those of you who do not know me or have not been paying attention, I'm Sue's oldest child, Dickie, because that is what my mom called me. On behalf of our family, I would like to thank you for being here with us, as you indeed honor us, as well as my mother, by being here this morning as we send Sue on to her final resting place. Yes, I do believe my mom will now finally be at rest, but more importantly, at peace. My mom, in her last 20 years or so, would never leave her home before noon for a variety of reasons and imaginary issues, so I'm pretty sure this is the first funeral she has attended that began at 10 a.m. My mom's life, as she and we knew it, for what seemed like forever, did not end when she passed away quietly several days ago, but when her rock, my dad Marv, died tragically 16 years ago. He had truly been her protector, director, defender, provider, lover, friend, and confidant. In fact, he was everybody's confidant. And then suddenly he was gone, and to a great extent, so was my mom. He was such a large part of all of our lives. It was as if she was now cut off from the world. Sure, she carried on and miraculously lived independently in their condo for 13 years, still driving, but only in her little 10-mile circle to Carrie's and Tommy's or Mark's and Heinen's. But she stopped playing Maj, stopped seeing and being with her friends, stopped any kind of traveling, even to see me and my family in Chicago. and stopped even visiting her only sibling, her beloved sister Ellie, in Florida, as unfortunately Sue's world and brain continued to contract. My mom was always a beautiful woman who wanted to look as attractive as she could. In the last 2.5 years of her life, while most of her memory, both short and long term, was gone, and she was living at Arden Court's memory care facility in Chagrin Falls, she still prided herself with having her long fingernails on her long, slender fingers painted to perfection and her hair fussed over by the attentive staff. Sue was the attendant's pet because of her spunk, occasional winning smile, as well as her heartfelt appreciation for how she was treated. Those wonderful, devoted, underpaid people cared for her as lovingly as a mother cares for a child, and Mom truly loved and trusted them. Generally, however, Sue's demeanor with the other residents at the Arden Courts was a little less familial. Mom did not have the patience or understanding to deal with the shortcomings she perceived of others. Whether it was bad manners in the dining room or obvious, again to her, general grossness, Sue was known to shake her head, I inherited that, roll her eyes, I inherited that, or actually utter an off-color word or two, I inherited that. Sue had always been a little too quick to judge others, even those in her own family, but that certainly was exacerbated by her worsening dementia. But still, it was no less hurtful and real in the moment to those she targeted. There was no hiding how she felt, as she never lost her ability to communicate her displeasure. In these last years of her life, when there was more pain, real and imagined, physical and mental in her life, a smile was often able to communicate what all the words in the English language could not. In addition to the generally excellent staff at the Arden Courts, my sister Carrie and her second husband Bruce, and here I must digress briefly. Bruce was a childhood friend of mine and the oldest brother of my dear friend Harold. During the days before the start of my freshman year at OSU, when I abruptly quit the Sammy house where I was going to live, I became a student without housing. Bruce and Harold's dad, Albert, divorced from their mother, had moved to Columbus and saw it as an opportunity to be around his boys that he greatly loved and sorely missed, and took a small two-bedroom apartment at 14th and High. Again, Al took a small apartment to live with them. Albert was gracious and unselfish enough to take me in, to live in his apartment with his boys. Now back to Sue's story. Bruce, increasingly and often without my sister present, would stop to visit my mom and hold her hand and share a smile and spend time with her. The apple clearly does not fall far from the tree. For this and so much more, I will be forever grateful. My mother lives on. I look at my daughter Tracy and see my mother. I look at my wife Adrienne and have always seen my mother's mother Marie, known to all her grandchildren as Grandma Riri, who both physically and spiritually was a person beautiful from the inside out. My parents gave me the gift, security, and confidence that comes with unconditional love, always. That love provided the foundation for me to go on and have a happy and blessed life in every important way imaginable. That was especially true in my great desire to emulate the family life my parents gave to me and what seemed like the love and respect my parents had for each other, as well as the roles they played as father and mother in the fabulous 50s. I wanted to marry an attractive, modern girl like Suzanne Lee Schreiber Baskin, who was but a girl of 19, a year removed from high school when she married my father, and all of 22 when I came into the world. From the beginning, it was a wonderful world for me, feeling the ever-present love of my parents and their parents who lived nearby, like next door in the case of my dad's parents, and around the block for my mom's folks. It probably was as close to a wonderful multi-generational existence for all as the kids were doted on constantly. Now, I was told, of course, by my brother and sister, Tommy and Carrie, who I loved dearly, that I was Mom's favorite child. I never really saw it that way, but then again, now that I think about it, it does seem reasonable. From what I know of me and them. But really, what I remember was my family always doing what families do, eating together, talking together, arguing together, taking drives together, visiting the grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins together, watching TV, especially sports together. And yes, Sue was a big sports fan. Again, a modern woman who actually came by it naturally and was quite the bowler in her day. Mom's dad, Harry dear, how Grandma Riri referred to her husband, was a minor league baseball player and a major sports fan tavern owner. As the story goes, when my mother was ready to give birth, and my parents were living with Riri and Harry dear at the time, Harry dear was enlisted to drive the expectant couple down to Mount Sinai. When my father finally noticed Harry had passed the hospital several times and wanted to know why, Harry simply answered he was waiting for the end of the Indians game that he was listening to on the radio. But what our family did together more than anything was simply a lot of laughing and talking, having fun and enjoying each other's company. And that laughter and lively conversation was just as often joined by friends as well as family. The home I grew up in, the home my mother made for us, was always a welcoming place for my parents' friends and or the children's friends to hang out at. Life seemed wonderful, simple, uncomplicated, and timeless. And all you needed was love. Maybe it was an illusion, rose-colored by the passage of time, but I truly believe it was my reality and a way of living that I never intended to give up. And to this day, that is how I try to live my life. Thank you, Mom, for your gift of life and love. Thank you. Love to you. May life be a blessing for all of you.
Hi, I'm Dickie's second oldest by 4 minutes son, Sue's second oldest by 4 minutes grandson, Chris. I'll try to live up to those great words from my dad. Try to make you guys laugh a little bit, we'll see. It's hard to believe that just over 15 years ago, we were here for Marv's funeral. None of Sue's 9 grandchildren were married. I was living in New York and still a few months away from meeting my Beechwood bred wife, Kelly, randomly out one night on a floating bar called the Frying Pan. None of us had children, at least that we knew of. Grandma's Corolla had just a few hundred miles on it, and Kyle hadn't even graduated yet. Fast forward 15 years, and Sue's oracle-like birthday and anniversary calendar is overflowing with wedding dates and 10 great-grandchildren. Trump is president. The Browns are good again, we think. The Cavs have won a championship. The Indians lost to the Cubs in the World Series. Lisa has her own place. Carrie is married to Bruce Bogart, who records a weekly podcast in the back room at Corky's. Grandma's Corolla still has a few hundred miles on it. And Kyle is far and away the most successful Baskin and still hasn't graduated yet. After Grandpa Marv passed away unexpectedly, my weekly Sunday calls went from Sue in the background to her answering the phone. I try to place my call before her Maj game or trip to Mark's, but sometimes I mistimed, and I'd get her answering machine with that bizarre message. Hello, you have reached. On very rare occasions, she'd be compelled to break out the nuclear football that was her sat phone, used exclusively for making outgoing long-distance calls, and ring me. This was the only time that phone was ever unplugged from its charger. And on the even rarer occasions when I'd mistakenly call her on the cell phone instead of her home line, she would immediately assume it was a national emergency. As time went on and Grandma's memory banks and hearing softened, those weekly calls became a bit more challenging, but never less entertaining. She would tell the same story over and over again, like it was the first time she was telling it. And even though I knew the punchline, I couldn't help but laugh when she'd call her neighbor or Uncle Tommy a real asshole. Or Ryan and Kyle real schmucks for never thanking her for her birthday checks. God forbid if it was a 5 or a 0 bonus year. And there was no coming back from Sue calling you a real putz. At least Phil Mickelson's never recovered. Then I'd call my twin brother Corey and ask if he'd talked to Grandma yet, as he usually called immediately before or right after, or often at the same time as I did. And all bets were off when Grandma got a call waiting. And he'd tell me word for word the exact same thing she told me. It also wasn't uncommon to have her go through her rigorous multi-factor authentication process to prove my credentials in order to identify myself. And it was worse when I'd have my wife Kelly call. It's Kelly. Carrie? No, Kelly. Marcy? No, Grandma Sue, it's Kelly. I'm married to your grandson, Chris, Dickie's son. Who is this? Is this some kind of joke? No, Grandma Sue, it's Kelly, Dickie's son, Chris's wife, Bo's mom. Okay, I'm not buying what you're selling. I'm going to hang up now. Sometimes she'd go through the whole call thinking I was Dickie, and I just go with it. As you could get some good nuggets that way, as Sue was never shy about sharing the latest family or neighborhood gossip. And then other times she'd forget who she was talking to mid-call and think I was a telemarketer. But I never took it personally when Sue rushed me off. Talking to Grandma Sue on the phone was like those calls in the movies where you have to keep the person on the line for 30 seconds so you can trace the call. The battle was on as soon as you heard that skeptical and somewhat bothered hello upon pickup. It was always as if Sue was trying to say goodbye as soon as you said hello. She always had the upper hand in every conversation. She would have made a great criminal. I'm still not convinced hers wasn't an assumed identity. But there was truly no greater thrill than getting Sue to chuckle and make her one of a kind laugh noise. And then there were the clandestine in-person trips to visit Sue in her solo years at the Stratton House. The process was always the same. You'd have to tell her the exact time you were coming so she was ready to buzz you in as if she was the warden of the Stratton House Penitentiary. And then the clock was again running. She would give you exact instructions on where to park even though it was the same every time. She would give you directions on how to find her apartment even though it was just down the hall past the party room. Somehow I'd still get lost. And she would always be waiting in the lobby with her apartment door locked behind her when you came in, reminding you to be quiet because the people there were old and didn't like kids making noise. And then you'd cross her threshold and take off your shoes and veer into the kitchen, where she'd immediately make you a turkey sandwich with whatever condiment she'd stolen this week and some sort of juice or warm caffeine-free soda option while you checked to see if any of the pictures of her grandchildren on the refrigerator immortalized in her Nestle Quick trophy case had changed. They hadn't. But I have to say, the best thing about marrying a girl from Cleveland was that I didn't need to sleep in Grandma's suffocatingly hot apartment on that stiff, crumb-filled guest room futon anymore. I swear one time I was at her apartment, her stuffed animal choir took a break from singing their cheerful holiday carols and begged me to set them free. Grandma Sue taught me so many things. How to own a car for 10 years and put less than 200 miles on it. How to make mid-'80s hockey hair look good on a woman regardless of the decade. How to dress up or dress down sweatpants and white Reeboks for any occasion. How to have skin tougher than a Geraci's burnt pepperoni. How to properly color block a TV guide. How to stretch a single cheeseburger from McDonald's into 7 days of meals. How to leave a restaurant with less silverware than it started with. How a coupon's expiration date is just a suggestion. And how to hold a proper grudge. But most importantly, Grandma Sue taught me, and I think all of us here today, how to live a life on your own terms. How to live simply, love greatly, and speak your mind boldly. Her life was a master class in the art of not giving a fuck. Yes, Sue Baskin gave 0 fucks and would probably be pissed we're all here today to talk about her instead of the Browns' chances of beating the Titans. But today, it's not your call, Grandma. So you just have to lay there and deal with hearing how much we all loved you, and how proud you should be of the life you lived and the legacy you and Marv left, and how none of our lives would be the same without you in it, calling us out on our shit. Sleep well, Grandma. You earned it.
It shouldn't happen soon, but we would each be quite honored by these testimonies. May Sue's memory endure among us all as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that with you is the fountain of life, that in your light we shall see light. The dust returns to the earth as it was, the spirit to God who gave it. May I ask those of you who are able to please rise. El mole rachamim shochein bamromim, hamse menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, im kiloshim utohorim kezoha harakia, mazirim et nishmat hachavera shelanu Shoshana shehalcha le'olama, ba'al harachamim yasireha b'seter knefav le'olamim, v'yitzur b'tzorcha chaim et nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom mishkava v'nomar Amen. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest unto the soul of Suzanne L. Baskin, who has departed this world. Source of mercy, bring her into your presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be thou her possession, may her repose be peace, and let us all say, Amen. Please be seated. The family would like to let you know that Shiva will be observed this afternoon from 4 to 8 o'clock at Jan and Tom's house on Tunbridge Lane in Beechwood. Let all of you who mourn the loss of our beloved Sue, and at this hour recall the companionship and cherished hopes that have passed away with her, give ear to the word of comfort spoken in the name of God. Only the body has died and is laid in the dust. The spirit lives in the shelter of God's love and mercy. Our loved ones continue also in the remembrance of those to whom they were precious. Their deeds of loving kindness, the true and beautiful words they spoke, are treasured as incentives and kept to be conduct by which the living honor the dead. A closing thought comes from Chaim Potok. We live less than the time it takes to blink an eye, if we measure our lives against eternity. So it may be asked, what value is there to a human life? There is so much pain in the world. What does it mean to have to suffer so much if our lives are nothing more than the blink of an eye? I learned a long time ago that the blink of an eye in itself is nothing, but the eye that blinks, that is something. A span of life is nothing, but the person who lives the span is something. A person can fill that tiny span with meaning. Meaning is not automatically given to life. It is hard to fill one's life with meaning. But a life filled with meaning is worthy of rest. Burial will be at the cemetery for family only. Thank you.